小麦，我们晚上吃什么
I don't know. Shall we order something?
？OK，
Jack a potato, fish and chips, all the British food. 我不要吃，我要吃饺子火锅、章鱼烧丸子。
欢迎大家回到我们的频道，在这里我们主要向大家分享英国的留学以及生活，同时也会向大家分享在英国兼职和工作中的经验。如果你有兴趣的话，请记得一定要订阅这个频道，点开旁边的小铃铛。那我们现在开始吧。嘿，大家好，我是 Amber。
嘿，大家好，我是山麦。
今天我们聊一聊
英国料理。
小麦，我实在受不了了，英国的菜怎么这么难吃，一点味儿都没有。
Well, it might sound like an excuse, but there's some actual history behind this. Thousands of years ago, humans would need to hunt pretty much all the time. They would go after all sorts of different animals to get that meat so that the tribe could survive, especially in harsh climates. Sometimes they would catch animals that were so massive that this tribe could be sustained for weeks. But the problem was that, of course, when you've got this massive chunk of meat you're trying to keep hold on to for weeks so that people can keep eating it and survive, it's going to decompose and become rancid and horrible. They discovered that parts from plants could help stop food from decomposing. So this is where spices came from. And they used these, obviously, instead of fridges, because fridges weren't around at the time. And apart from helping the food last longer, these spices also helped mask any bad flavor which the meat eventually developed. This method was particularly useful in hot climates where food decomposes much more quickly. Hotter regions on Earth also use more spices in their cooking, and this is especially because it's easier to find spices. Plants around the equator are more likely to store up these toxins to protect themselves from bacteria and fungus. However, in colder areas like Britain, spices aren't as necessary to preserve foods because the cold weather does that anyway. This is particularly helpful because winter is when food used to be much harder to obtain.
听你这么说，好像这是由于历史原因，因为英国人不太会用调料。但是呀，针对英国菜难吃这个问题，我还专门做了一些调查。像我之前特别喜欢追的一个剧叫《唐顿庄园》，看到里面的贵族吃的饭，其实也都是非常美味的，也不至于被称为现在黑暗料理。那为什么现在的菜都这么难吃，这么无味呢？说到对英国菜的影响，最重要的有两个关键点，就是工业革命和二战。现在人们耳熟能详的英国食物，像是炸鱼薯条，就是炸的鱼肉和薯条配在一起吃，大多数都形成于当时的工业革命时期。因为当时铁路运输的发展使沿海地区的鱼类都可以送到内陆，所以鱼类的价格呢就大幅的下降，并且当时忙碌的工人也需要廉价、方便携带以及热量高的食物，所以像炸鱼薯条这样的快餐就应运而生了。像是英国当时最有名的摇滚乐队 Beatles 披头士，他们都非常喜欢吃炸鱼薯条。之后城市的迅速发展带来了大量的人口，这导致伦敦本地的食物不能自给，所以人们只能靠外地运输来的食物来填饱肚子。所以保证食物的新鲜，人们就只能选择像是罐头类的这种不易腐败的食物，比如说是土豆。恩格斯曾这样描述1844年英国北部普通人的生活，他们的饮食越来越糟糕，最好也不过是在土豆里加一点碎的培根，许多人甚至连这个也吃不起，只有面包、奶酪、麦片粥和土豆。而身处社会最底层的爱尔兰人呢，只能吃土豆。之后又在二战时期，英国实行了食物配给制度，配给制整整持续了13年，在长期恶劣的条件下，一代人的味蕾期就这样养成了，再美好的食物，再精湛的手艺也都荒废了。小麦 ，Do you watch Kitchen Nightmares?
Yes, oh, it's a great show. I always think, thank God I'm not one of those people running the kitchen.
Exactly. But to be honest, even though it's a very stressful show, the food they're cooking looks really yummy.
Yeah, especially when Gordon Ramsay revamps the menu of the restaurant. I'm like, oh, that looks so good.
Yeah, and since Gordon Ramsay is British, it means that people in Britain, like a chef like him, can cook really yummy food.
Yes, definitely. It's ridiculous for people to think that there's no good food in Britain at all, and that no one in Britain can cook good food. So yes, Gordon Ramsay is an example, especially because he's a chef, that he can cook some delicious dishes.
If you go to his restaurant, I think I've heard that one of his special is beef Wellington. So what is that like?
Oh yeah, so beef Wellington is a special English dish, and it's got beef, and then outside of the beef there's pastry, and then often you would have that dish with mustard and maybe chips as well, and it's mainly about the quality of the beef. I think that's what makes a really good beef Wellington, and of course the pastry as well. But it's really nice, really satisfying, especially if it's done well, of course.
I heard it's very difficult to cook well. Do you know why?
I think that's because you don't want the beef to be overdone, because if you cook it too much, then the beef can be really dry inside. You don't want that to happen. You want it to be soft, succulent, and really tasty.
But the tricky thing is you need to keep the skin crispy, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So you need to cook it just enough.
Do you remember that time when we traveled to York in that famous tea room? Last time when we traveled to that famous tea room, do you remember? Because their special is a cheese dish. It was so delicious, and their English afternoon tea is so amazing. But I've seen a lot of tourists, they just ordering fish and chips, and seems like they really don't enjoy it.
Yeah, I think they just didn't know what to order, because if you've got 12 people eating and every single one of them orders fish and chips, it's going to be really boring.
所以啊，大多数对英国菜的第一印象可能是留学生们在学校食堂吃的第一顿炸鱼薯条，可能确实不怎么好吃，所以你得出的结论是英国菜不好吃。也可能是一些游客，你去的餐馆呢，那里并没有新鲜的鱼可以选择。你如果在那里点了炸鱼薯条，你也会得出来结论说英国菜不好吃。但是一个餐厅的水平，可能代表不了一个国家的水准。
In our next video about British food, we'll be talking about a bunch of different dishes which can be really tasty, so that if you ever come here to Britain, you're not going to be disappointed. And apart from that, we'll be talking about the British slang words around food. So, some of the dishes we'll be speaking about are full English breakfast, Sunday roast, haggis, and the famous stargazy fish pie. If you enjoy our videos, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment below about what you think of British food. Have you tried it before? What kinds do you like? Is there anything that you think is not nice about it?
如果你喜欢我们的视频的话，请给我们点赞留言，一定要告诉我们你最喜欢或者是吃过最难忘的一些英国菜。有什么英国菜是你觉得最难吃或者是最黑暗的料理呢？请在留言告诉我们吧，并且请记得追踪我们的社交账号哦。那我们下期再见吧，拜拜，
拜拜。We came to party all night long.